Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope y'all have been doing well, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about having a disabled sister. I've been talking to my sister about talking about this because I don't know, like I feel like a lot of people need to be educated on disabilities. Well, obviously I have lived with somebody who has a disability. I want to do this as a way to kind of like heal the trauma that we have, you know, going through all of it, and just talk about it, just to educate the public. And our story is, I would say, it's a little bit interesting. I'm gonna have my sister here with me and we're gonna talk about it. I'm gonna ask her a few questions. If y'all are interested, just keep on watching and we'll get right to it. So she's gonna introduce herself to y'all.
Hi guys, my name is Jennifer. I'm Karen's older sister, and I have a genetic condition called muscular dystrophy, specifically Bethlem-myopathy/Ulrich congenital muscular dystrophy. It's a mouthful every time.
So I want to start with kind of like how our family is. I want to start off with like our ages. So some of y'all know how old I am. I am currently 27 years old, and
I am 28. I'm actually going to be 29 tomorrow.
Yes. We do have an older brother. He is currently, I don't know how
32.
32.
Yeah.
So it's my older brother, my sister, and then me. We have both our parents. We didn't talk about this, but I guess it would be interesting to say that nobody in our family has had, that we know of, any sort of disability. It all started with like my sister. Like I feel like that sounds kind of
no, but it's true. I think there's actually like a specific term for it, like spontaneous mutation, I believe. You can correct me if I'm wrong, like putting a screenshot or something, but it's the reality. That's just what happens. It's a normal part of like biology. It happens in pretty much any type of organism that exists out there, animals, insects, of course humans. So it's just what happens.
The next question is, what is that diagnosis? We're going to talk a little bit about that. I know she went into it a little bit, but we're going to explain a little bit more.
Yeah. So to start out, for those that will probably be unfamiliar with it, muscular dystrophy is a group of genetic conditions that cause progressive muscle weakness, among a whole bunch of other symptoms, but it's mainly affecting the skeletal muscles, and the skeletal muscles are the muscles that help us move, you know, our arms, our legs, our neck, everything. I specifically have Bethlem-myopathy/Ulrich congenital muscular dystrophy, and normally if a person has muscular dystrophy, they're only going to be diagnosed with one, but unfortunately my case is unnecessarily complicated in that aspect. So the reason why I am technically diagnosed with both of them is I had genetic testing done, and I specifically have a genetic mutation in a gene that we all have called collagen 6 alpha 1, or it's most commonly abbreviated as COL6A1. A mutation in this specific gene falls under a section under muscular dystrophies, because there's many types of them. And this section is called collagen type 6 disorders. I think there's another name for it, but that's mainly the big one. And then under collagen type 6 disorders, there are technically two muscular dystrophies that fall under that. There is Bethlem-myopathy, and then there is Ulrich congenital muscular dystrophy. Bethlem-myopathy is considered the least. It is basically, it is just considered not as severe. Think about it kind of like a spectrum, right? Bethlem-myopathy is on the left, where the left side is considered not as severe. Like obviously there is symptoms that affect the person, but the person is still able to walk. They do have muscle weakness, but they're able for the most part continue doing a lot of things without the assistance of like mobile aids, like walkers, wheelchairs, or canes. On the other end of the spectrum is Ulrich congenital muscular dystrophy. Now, this muscular dystrophy is very severe compared to Butttt. This one, I think from what I've read, causes the individual to not be able to walk at all. And something that I didn't mention, just because there's a lot to go over, but muscular dystrophy, I think most of them cause something called contractures. Not to be confused with contractions. That's something different related to pregnancy, but something called contractures. And basically, contractures are the tightening of every one of your joints. And what contractures cause is that you are not, this is as much as I can extend my arm. It causes these joints to not be able to fully extend, causes them to quite literally become like stiff. And so it creates problems in obviously walking. Think about like in your knees and your ankles. And then, you know, with a lot of mobility stuff. And so on Butttt myopathy does cause contractures, but they're not as severe. But then on Ulrich, these are very, very severe contractures. Contractures where I think I've even seen pictures of individuals where their contractures are so severe that they're like sort of like inverted. They are unable to really even like move them at all due to the contractures. Now, kind of go over what collagen 6 is in the first place, because I've mentioned it several times. Specifically, the gene collagen 6 alpha 1 is a gene that provides instructions for making one part of the type 6 collagen. And a lot of you may be familiar with collagen, you know, because of skincare products and stuff like that, or supplements. But collagen is found in, you know, a lot of different parts in our body. And specifically type 6 collagen is a flexible protein found in the space that surrounds our cells. And specifically the protein that's produced from the Col6A1 gene is actually a specific chain called alpha 1 of the type 6 collagen. So this is a chain that then goes on to form type 6 collagen. It gets very complicated, unfortunately. Even I don't really understand a lot of it, just because I am obviously not a geneticist or a doctor, but I'm trying my best to kind of explain it. And then this chain, alpha 1, combines with chains produced from other genes to produce a complete type 6 collagen molecule. Collagens are found in the extracellular matrix, so on the outside of all of our cells, which is an intricate lattice that forms in the space between cells and provides structural support.
Yeah, so the way I think of it is I have this like faint memory, some doctor, I really don't know, but that the collagen is basically like the glue to our muscles. It is really important for our muscles.
And the way that we move them and everything. And like she said, they're in that extracellular matrix surrounding the cells that make up the muscles used for movement. And these are cells that make up the connective tissue, which provides strength and flexibility to structures throughout the body, including skin and joints. The extracellular matrix is necessary for cell stability and growth, which is why you can imagine having a mutation in this gene. Obviously, in any gene can cause a disruption in our chromosomes, but specifically in this gene, it causes the symptoms that I have because it quite literally affects, like she said, the glue that makes up the cells that are connected to each other in our skeletal muscle cells. Which is why it causes the muscle weakness, the contractures, like the joint tightness, and of course, mobility issues.
The next question, or what I want to move into to talk about, is how long it took to get to her diagnosis. We both know it took a really long time. Like I said, I think I just grew up, I don't know about my brother, my parents too. We were just very confused. All we really knew is that she had some muscle weakness and she did fall a lot, and we would go to the doctor, but they really didn't do anything.
To start out, I was actually a patient for basically my entire childhood at a pediatric hospital called Shriners Hospital. Some of you may be familiar with it. But this specific hospital helped, because I know there's one for kids with burns, but this one specifically helped kids with orthopedic conditions.
Like the commercials.
Oh yeah, like the commercials. Yeah,
there's a lot of commercials.
Yeah, there's commercials about that.
Because it's a non-profit. No?
Yeah, and the specific one I went to, it actually doesn't exist anymore, from my understanding. Was the one
in Galveston now? It used to be here in Houston,
in the medical center.
I think something happened that it wasn't getting funded.
Yeah.
And they had to move to...
They merged with its sister hospital in Galveston. But yeah, so I went to that hospital basically my entire childhood. The reason why I started going to that hospital was because, and this is what my mother has told me, by the way, because I obviously don't remember, but my parents did always notice small things when I was a baby, but they, I was their second born, and they're Mexican. Not trying to say anything bad, obviously, because I'm Mexican, but like, I'm sure other Latino people that may be watching this can kind of understand that a lot of times Latino parents don't have a very wide understanding of what disability is. And I don't blame them for that. It just is the reality. But they notice small things like, when I was a baby, how when you grab a baby by like the little hands and you pull them up, they tend to, once they're a few months older, they grab pretty tightly onto your hands, and they feel strong. They always said that I felt floppy, is basically the word that they say in Spanish. And they also noticed that my neck would kind of like just roll to the side. And there's actually like a picture, I believe, and we can try to find the picture to insert it here, of my dad actually carrying me, and my neck is just kind of flopped to the side. So they noticed weakness, but they didn't think anything of it until I started walking. And they noticed that when I walked, my feet were kind of like turned inwards. Think of it kind of like how birds walk, I guess, is the best way I can like describe it.
I don't remember that. You would walk like this?
Yes, yeah.
Like
inverted,
a penguin?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I feel like that's me.
Something like that.
Some people have that gait, like that. They walk.
I think there's a term for it, but basically kind of like a bird. And they noticed that I would fall a lot as well. And obviously when a kid is first starting to walk, they're going to fall a lot, right? But specifically with me, it was falling and having a lot of times like difficulty getting up compared to, like my brother or my sister. And so when from my understanding, I think they talked to some distant relative of my dad, and she's the one that referred them to take me to Shriners. And then at Shriners, they performed a muscle biopsy on one of my legs when I was, if I remember correctly, 3 or 4 years old. And in that biopsy, it was determined that I had abnormalities in my muscles. These were very vague abnormalities. But from what my mother has told me, the doctors explained that this was probably muscular dystrophy. They didn't know which one, but they did say that it was probably muscular dystrophy. And so the reason why I say that it took almost 19 years to get an actual diagnosis is because even though my parents were told kind of that I may have muscular dystrophy, they didn't know which one, and my parents didn't even really understand what that was. And unfortunately, this was my experience. Just a quick disclaimer: my experience with Shriners, and when watching that also did go to Shriners may have a different experience, but this was my experience. The doctors didn't do a very good job of explaining to my parents what exactly that this condition is and what that entails. And this may be also due to the fact that there was a language barrier. My parents don't really speak English. And of course there was a translator, but there was obviously a lot of things lost in translation. And so the reason why it took so long was because it's actually a reason that my mother is still confused about. They did the biopsy that when I was 3, 4 years old. And then I also had another biopsy done when I was 15, because apparently the first sample was lost. It was like being held at a lab, but that lab, during one of the hurricanes that happens here in Texas throughout the years, actually flooded that lab. and that sample was lost. So I needed another biopsy. The biopsy showed the same thing that it did in the first one. And it wasn't actually until basically the last year that I was going to be released, you know, due to my age from the hospital, that a neurologist actually asked my mom, why hasn't she had genetic testing done? And my mom was very confused because I had geneticist appointments all throughout my childhood. And the doctor was very confused as to why I had not had genetic testing done. And she was like, you need to have this genetic testing done before you age out. Yeah, before you age out of the hospital, because if not, this specific testing is very, very expensive. I think at that time she told us it was like $7,000, something like that. And so quite literally we were rushing to have that testing done. And I literally did not know what type of muscular dystrophy I had until quite literally the last appointment I had with Shriners. I'm not even kidding. It was the very last appointment I had with them. And it was a geneticist that came in and went over the results with me. And that was that. That was my last appointment with them. Obviously, I'm kind of, bitter and angry over these doctors. I don't quite understand why they waited so long and why, I don't know, I think they could have done so many things to try to explain, even to myself, because I am the person with the condition. And, I think a lot of people don't really understand that even as a kid, you can explain that to the kid, right? To an extent, what they have. But the fact that they didn't even take the time to try to explain that to my parents, much less to myself, I think is very much a disservice on their part. And unfortunately, that was my experience. And that led to a lot of unfortunate, medical trauma, and also just a lot of distrust, both on my end and my parents due to these doctors. I will say that thankfully that neurologist, she actually did right by me, and she did everything she could to try to help me, with the genetic testing. And she was actually the only one that helped me try to get a wheelchair at that point. But other than that, that is the reason why it took almost 19 years to get that actual diagnosis. And the only reason why, my sister and I even know, the symptoms and more information about it was because of the internet. Yeah. Not really because of the doctors. And I'm sure any chronically ill people or disabled people watching this can probably, what's it called? They can relate to that, because unfortunately that is the situation here in the United States of America.
I wanted to talk a little bit about my experience with Shriners. Basically, I remember getting excited going to Shriners because they would you would arrive. I remember getting on those elevators. Obviously, a lot of times my mom would have to pull my sister from her classes to go to her appointments. They would give you a little teddy bear every time, right?
Yeah.
Or something like that. They had these old men there. To me, I thought it was Santa Claus. I was very young, so I really didn't know. And I remember seeing it was a big hospital. So there was a lot of stories. I don't know if you remember that there was a playground that was outside, and it was literally way up there. So to me, I remember those things. I remember that. I remember they had a playroom. It was a room, I think it was where they did the physical therapy.
Yeah.
I can't remember clearly.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking
they
about.
They had the dollhouse.
With the
Yes.
The dollhouse and the mats.
Yes.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
And to me, it was a happy experience, I guess you could say, because it's a children's hospital, so there's a lot of colors and everything. I remember some doctor doing, I think that mean doctor. We know who we're talking about.
Who we're talking about.
That doctor. She had a really mean doctor that just would scream at her, make her cry all the time. He referred her to a psychologist because she started crying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I was 13, which is why I was put on antidepressants at that age. But that's another story. We can make a whole series about that.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that they checked my knee. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah,
they did the little the knee thing.
The reflex thing.
The reflex. And he said something that my knees were like this because it's genetic. I do have a lot of memories of just being confused, feeling guilty because of the times that I did accidentally hurt my sister, because I didn't know, and my parents didn't know better either. It's a lot of guilt and trauma, I guess you could say, coming from my end, because I'm just I have all these happy memories, and she's like, oh, these memories are not, they were not a good time.
No, I initially was like very, because when you're a kid, like she said, like you don't know why you're going there. I was always initially like excited because, like she said, like the playgrounds, like she said, like when we were kids. Oh yeah, she would get us McDonald's, yeah, and then they would almost always give us like little toys when we were leaving. But obviously, as I grew older, things changed. Obviously, because you're not so little anymore. And I actually started, and more than that, it was just I started dreading actually going to the appointments, actually then getting excited. But like she said, it's like there's several instances as to why, you know, the things that we feel now towards that hospital happened and everything, but that's another story for another day.
Then we can go into how school was. How was school being disabled? Talk about how hard it was, dealing with teachers and other information.
So how do I even start? So when I was in elementary school, from my understanding, I don't think I was still under Section 504. And for those that are unfamiliar, Section 504 is, I think it's actually a law in general for Americans with disabilities, but specifically in relation to public school, it is basically a type of program for kids with disabilities, and it grants them, you know, the right to certain accommodations while they are in school. And this program is considered more towards, like, I don't even know what right word to use, but basically, for lack of a better word, for kids with not as severe disabilities, because there is another program, at least here in Texas, I'm not sure if it's nationwide, called IEP, Individualized Education Plan, I believe. And that's more for like kids with a whole lot of needs and that require quite a lot of accommodations, but more towards, like, for example, like autism spectrum disorder. So when I was in elementary school and actually all the way in middle school, I actually was not under any of those programs, from my understanding. And the only reason why I would receive, I don't even want to say any type of accommodation, because these were barely any accommodations at all, was because my parents would try to go before the year started to school with paperwork with my condition, and talk to the principal about that. And if the principal felt nice enough, they would, you know, try to give me some accommodations, but a lot of times these accommodations were not the best. I mean, speaking, you know, with the fact that I actually was forced to take an entire year of gym when I was in 6th grade, despite my parents trying to fight tooth and nail because I was quite literally not able to do a lot of stuff. But anyway, once I got into 9th grade, the nurse there, when I started having like a lot of falls and difficulties, she was actually the one that helped me get into Section 504. And we didn't even know what that was. Like, my parents didn't know even more. And she had a lot of communication with my mom, fortunately, as much as she could, and like with the principal and everything at the school. And she was the reason why I got into Section 504. And the specific accommodations I had were, since I started using a wheelchair by then, I was granted permission to leave about 5-ish minutes before the bell rang to be able to go to my next period. And so to not have to be walking, I guess, more like being pushed in the middle of a crowd of, you know, rowdy, very pushy kids in the hallways. And with that came the accommodation of having a person push me, because I actually also didn't have the strength to, you know, push myself, you know, all that entire distance from one period to the next one. And that brings into the picture my sister, since she is a year younger than me. During, what was it, 10th? I mean, no, for me it was 11th and 12th grade. She would, under the Section 504 program, the counselor that I worked, like, helped me with some stuff. I asked her if it was possible to have my sister integrated into some of my electives, since they were like, they included all the grades, right? It wasn't just specific to one grade, so that it would be easier for her to, you know, take me from one period to another, compared to her having to leave her own class and then having to go to my class and everything, all of that, right? Which sounds fine and dandy, obviously, in paper, right? But, and I'm sure she can remember various instances where, despite being under Section 504 and basically under the law, having the right to have these accommodations, we had so many instances of teachers not wanting to respect my right, to the accommodation, despite paperwork, despite having the actual principal talk to them about that.
Approve it.
Yeah, and they would throw fits about me leaving not even 10 minutes from the bell rang, 5 minutes, and giving my sister and I like so much trouble, and we felt like we were getting in trouble because of that. But yeah, there's like so many different instances. Also, just like a specific memory I have of when I would get to class. So as because the classes were so small, I would leave my wheelchair at the front of the class, as far away from being in the way. And there were so many instances of just kids just not caring, like getting onto my wheelchair and popping wheelies because I wasn't on it. And the teacher's not really like giving them any, what's it called? Like any punishment or anything.
No. Yeah. In case y'all heard her, this is what kept crying at the door and scratching the door.
Kids doing whatever they wanted with my wheelchair.
Yeah.
I'm actually surprised it didn't break at one point, because these are full grown, like teenage boys, by the way, because it was always teenage boys for some reason, like popping wheelies with my wheelchair. Like looking back on it, I kind of laugh. But it's like also like, why did the teachers allow that? And some of them even like laughed along with them for some reason, which is like messed up when I think back on it.
Yeah.
But, and I think also because since I was always like a shy kid, I was too scared to confront them as well. So I would just kind of like just stare like daggers into them, but not really say anything. So that's also probably a reason why they kept doing that. But I don't know. I think maybe also the teachers give them something.
Yeah, definitely. The teachers, I remember, what was it? I think it was my 11th grade with the electives that I took with her. They made our lives so hard. Like, I'm just like, we can't do this, because it's going to be really hard on me, first of all, because I'm the one that has to pick up the chair. I'm the one that has to push you. Do you remember the field trips?
Oh, yeah.
So irritating that they would make us go, because it was literally a grade. Like they had attendance and we had to go to these places. What was it? Like a child development class?
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm thinking of the same class as you are.
Yeah, the child development class where we had to go to a daycare. And that teacher was just like, I just have bad memories on that. And I would get really annoyed. I remember us taking those classes. I don't remember my 10th grade really, honestly, that much. They did make our lives harder, especially when you had substitute teachers.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh, those substitute teachers, like what? And I'm not even gonna blame them, because I have worked as a substitute teacher, and if the teacher doesn't leave a note, like how are they supposed to know?
Yeah.
If you think about it, you were in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
How
could I be faking it if I had a whole wheelchair?
Unless they thought you were just like injured. What's the logic of having to go in between thousands of kids? No, yeah.
It was like with all the grades combined, it was thousands.
Like I remember my graduating class was like 900 students, and our school was 10, 11, and 12. If you think about it, it was thousands of students. And trying to push somebody in a wheelchair like that, the kids push you around. You're gonna arrive late. And obviously, because I'm the one pushing you, having to take you to your class, and then having for me to go to my class, like I was gonna be late. And obviously, I would have to get a tardy slip, and
Yeah.
And some teachers were I just remember one teacher that was really nice, but besides that, you always had issues on that.
Yeah.
And when you were in middle school,
it was worse in middle school.
Yeah.
Like back then I didn't use a wheelchair yet, because I was very adamant in basically not using any mobility aids. But I think when you're a teenager, you think that, I wanted to fit in as much as I could, and I knew that using a mobility aid would bring me attention that I did not want. Mm-hmm. So I was very stubborn in not wanting to use even like a cane or something. That brought me a lot of problems as well. But again, like I think, and it may be different now, but at least here, my situation is not a rare case. Like here in Texas, and it may be different now because I've been out of school or high school for
over 10 years.
Yeah, over 10 years. But the problems that kids with disabilities have in public schools here in Texas is pretty bad. And I'm sure any people that are watching this that have kids, you know, with the disabilities that are trying to receive accommodations in school can relate to that. And that's just the unfortunate reality.
So now I want to talk a little bit about how life is right now. We've been talking a lot about the past. She's going to talk a little bit about some surgeries that she had recently. What was it, maybe like a year or two ago?
Yeah, my first one was in 2021.
Just recently, that's what mainly you've had done. You started using like the braces. You didn't talk about the braces.
I guess maybe like the treatment option, because there's not that many, but the ones that I have had. The treatments that I have had, obviously there is no actual medicine to treat muscular dystrophy, at least not the one that I have. I'm not sure of any other ones, but the most common type of treatment is physical therapy, and that's mainly to help with building stamina and trying to, like, from my understanding, like help not prevent, but like to reduce maybe how fast I will develop contractures. And then very, very recently, because for a period of time, I actually stopped going to the doctor due to my experiences at Schreiner. I had a lot of distrust. But when I started going back to the doctor and I was again referred to specialists, now as an adult, I started going to the orthopedist. And I actually met with an orthopedic surgeon that told me that there exists a surgery that is specifically in the tendons of my legs. And that helps a little bit with contractures. And the specific surgeries I had were tendon lengthening, tendon release, and tendon transfer. Basically, tendon lengthening and tendon release is basically when they do very small cuts in the tendon to basically elongate it and kind of make it more flexible, you know, because due to my contractures, it does cause the tightening of my joints, so it helps with that. Specifically, I had my lengthening done on my Achilles tendon. Oh my gosh, and I think one tendon under my foot. I can put I can send you the screenshot of like the surgery. Yeah, the specific tendons. And then I had tendon transfer, which is basically where I don't know how, but somehow it's not magically, but scientifically possible. Yeah, they move my tendon from one place to another. They just kind of like move it over a little bit, like let's say to the left. And the reasoning behind that is that due to my muscular dystrophy, scientifically, there's some of my tendons are stronger than others. And those specific tendons that are stronger than others cause the weak ones to get even more weaker, and they cause my foot to become, inverted inside. Mm-hmm. And so the purpose of moving those tendons is to, let's say, move the strong tendon more to the outside so that it actually forces my foot to go straighten out. Yeah. Of course, the lengthening is to alleviate that tightness, and the overall purpose of these surgeries is not necessarily, an aesthetic reason. It's not to make me look like I'm walking differently. Of course, it does cause that, but it's mainly to actually help with pain, because as I'm sure you can understand, walking a certain way for an extended period of time ends up causing like muscular and neurological pain. And unfortunately, that's what happened with me. It would cause pain around my ankles and actually swelling at one point. So those surgeries helped a lot with that. And during those surgeries, I had to have a cast on for, one of them was 8 weeks, and I think the other one was 6 weeks. But it was due to how
it was healing.
How it was healing, yeah. But during that time, I was pretty much immobile. I couldn't walk, of course, and so she actually helped a lot.
I helped.
Like, where do I even begin? Like, you helped me with going to the bathroom, taking a shower, putting me in the car when I needed to go to my appointments, putting me in the bed. Like, it wasn't just her. It was like, my mom or my dad as well. But since she goes to the gym a lot, like, obviously your channel is about that. Yeah. Like, she's like really fit, so she helped me a whole lot with
like
that.
honestly, I feel like that's one of my reasons of wanting to like get physically, you know, stronger. I'm pretty sure if I didn't go to the gym, I wouldn't have been able to do all of that.
Yeah, because you couldn't pick me up.
Before I remember, if we were on the floor, I could.
Yeah,
it has helped me be helpful, you know, just help around, and especially when she got the surgeries, she needed a lot of help. Yeah, it's a long one that basically wraps up everything, and just as a reminder, please like and subscribe. If you have any questions, leave a comment below. I'll see y'all next time.
bye.
Bye.